Welcome. I'm Mayor Gary Sulz, and with me today is Paul Steinman, Director of Development Services. The City of Revelstoke's Planning Department is currently working on the zoning bylaw comprehensive rewrite project, and we're excited to announce that the first stage of this project is complete. Now, it's important, if you own property in Revelstoke, this project will affect you. So, Paul, at a high level, can you explain the zoning, really what zoning is?
Yeah.
And why should people care about this?
Yeah, most certainly. So under provincial legislation as a municipality, we are allowed to adopt a bylaw that assigns what we call a zone to every single property in the city. That zone spells out the rules for how you can develop. It will tell you what type of development you can do. So can you do residential? If you can do residential, can you just build single family homes? Can you build apartments? Can you build row houses? It'll tell you if you can do commercial, industrial, etc. In addition to that, it will also tell you the rules that your development needs to abide by. So how much? How much density can you build? Can you build a 4-story building or can you build a 1-story building? It will tell you how tall you can build. It will tell you how much of a lot you're allowed to take up with your development, the setbacks from the property line that your development has to meet, and it will also tell you whether or not you're allowed to subdivide your property, so chop your property up into different smaller parcels that you can then sell off individually. So it's a very important project, and this first major milestone, what it is it is the drafting of all the new zones, and it is applying those zones to a new map in the city. So everyone who had the classic R1 zoning before will now have a new zoning applied to them. The development regulations will be comparable, but there are changes, and the public does need to understand what those changes are so that they have a better idea of how it impacts development on their property.
And we're doing this just to bring things kind of modernized, because these are old zoning applications or bylaws for that. But then the provincial government has thrown their hat in the ring at us as well, correct?
Yes, that is correct. So this update is long overdue for the city. We did a minor update in 2022, but really our bylaw in its current state is reminiscent of the zoning bylaw when it was originally adopted back in the late 50s, I believe around 1956. So it's long overdue for a change, and updating the zoning bylaw is the number one thing we can do to support seeing an increase in housing supply within the community on the market housing side. So very, very important. And it also helps delineate what type of development we want to see. So do we want to see for housing large lots being subdivided and chopped up with big, large houses on them? Or do we want to see small lots with smaller houses being built that start promoting more affordability on that market side?
And this also gives us the ability to, when you're done the zoning, to do infill on some of those smaller lots without having to go piecemeal to each one. Is that correct?
Exactly. So there will be zones that are more appropriate to support infill development in a more modern way. So, smaller row houses that, again, when you get more units onto a lot, you hope that it promotes affordability. And as you indicated earlier, it does align with the direction that the province is going. So the province recently passed legislation that says we have to accommodate a minimum of 4 units on every single residential lot. So this zoning bylaw update will accommodate that, and it will also create new zones that support a type of development that the community has indicated they want to see as part of our official community plan process. That's where this bylaw takes a lot of its direction from, is our official community plan that was recently updated in 2022.
Right, good. So there'll be some creative solutions for those contractors to be able to do what the provincial government has asked of them. So yes, it'll be interesting as we go on. So what are the opportunities for the community to learn and ask questions about the zoning rewrite?
Yep, certainly. So a zoning bylaw is a technical document.
Right.
You really start delving into the nitty gritty of what the development regulations are. So they can be hard to navigate. And instead of doing broad stakeholder outreach where we do open houses and you come see some boards and that's it, you kind of walk through and then you leave, we're going to be hosting what we're calling coffee chats. So we're going to have slots. They'll be organized on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. They start April 8th. The schedule is available on Talk Revelstoke. It's also outlined in a letter that we're sending to all residents in Revelstoke. So we're doing a full community-wide mail out to inform them of, hey, there's these opportunities to come become more informed. Again, starting April 8th. People can come ask questions. We'll give a brief overview of the nature of the changes for the neighborhood. what it means for them, why the changes were made, and then individuals can ask questions about how it impacts their property. And one of the key things that we really want to encourage people to do in advance is visit Talk Revelstoke. Take a look. We've developed an information sheet on there, and it helps guide you through a step-by-step process to do two things. Check your current zoning and check what your proposed new zoning would be. So then you can compare and say, oh, right now I'm allowed to build one house with a suite. Under the new regulations, I'm allowed to build 4 dwelling units on my property, and the setbacks are slightly reduced, for example. So people then get a better idea of how their properties are impacted, how their neighboring properties are impacted, and then more broadly, how the community as a whole is impacted.
So really going to be a big change, and yet we're abiding by what's there for the most part now in most neighborhoods. In some neighborhoods, we'll see a big change.
One of the biggest things that this bylaw is doing is we're really cognizant not to break things.
Right.
So if someone's currently operating a certain way on their property, we have some older commercial businesses that are operating kind of spread out throughout the city. We're not going to change their zoning so that they can no longer operate.
Yeah.
That's being maintained. But this bylaw really sets us up for the future. So when a developer comes in and says, I want to rezone a property, they have a suite of zones that they can select that accommodates housing and other forms of development in a way that aligns with other documents that have been done, such as our official community plan.
And so it's going to be really clear to people when they come in, here's the list of parameters with which you can build and go forward and do your thing, which is really going to be easier for those coming to basically say, hey, what can I do? Here's the list. Here's how we go forward.
Exactly.
So any other things that we should know, Paul, with this? So with the coffee chats, it gives people a chance to do that one-on-one with members of your department, and they'd be able to ask some pointed questions about their own particular property and their own neighborhood.
Yep. And one of the key things we want to inform the public of is this is a starting point. There's still more work to be done on the bylaw. We still got to draft things like parking regulations, for example. That will come at a later date. Because it's such a big project and a big undertaking, we wanted to do it in these stages so that the public has a better understanding of each stage. And rest assured that this bylaw isn't going to be going forward for formal council consideration until the fall of this year, fall or winter. So there's still lots of time to come out, provide feedback, get a better understanding of what the changes are. It's a very important project that we don't want to rush, and we want to make sure the community has time to not only understand it, but also provide feedback that can help inform any changes that are needed.
And I think that's really the key to this sort of engagement, is getting people out there to say, hey, I'm concerned about my property. Yeah. And this is the time for them to ask and to get that information so that they have a really comprehensive understanding of what's going on in their neighborhood. So thank you for doing that, for giving those opportunities to our residents to, to be able to work through. So Paul, thanks for joining me today. I'm really interested in how this project will come to fruition. And I want to say thanks to all of the audience for listening in. Be sure to take a few minutes to watch our other videos on the City Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram accounts. So thanks again, Paul.
No problem.
Thank
Happy
you.
to be here.